Okay, this is going to be the breakdown of the injuries on Maddie, starting with stab and incise wounds of the head and neck. And see, when we look at this, we go, well, 13 of the head and neck. But as you actually see these injuries, it really becomes clear because it sounds really bad, 13 head and neck, until you really start looking at them. The first one is on the right parietal scalp. So we know now this is the parietal bone. This is the right parietal scalp. Above and in front of the right ear is an approximately 1 3/4 inch linear stab wound, 1 3/4 inch linear stab wound, oriented from 7 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So 7 o'clock to 2 o'clock, it's a stab wound. It's only 1 1/4 inches deep. Now on a clip point K-bar, you can see I've got one right here at 1 1/4. It's a double-sided blade. So this would be sharp on both ends. So it's not a K-bar. And the fact that at 1 1/4 inches deep, it's already 1 inch wide. This is in my opinion, no doubt a butcher knife type knife, butcher knife. Um, and it's got a square end and a sharp end from 7 to 2, 7 o'clock end is squared. A dark red abrasion at the wound edges extending up 1/8 inch from the interior and posterior wound edges. So it's got an abrasion. It's a hemorrhagic wound track, so it's bleeding as it happens. And it doesn't pierce, even though it's 1 1/4 inches, it doesn't talk about piercing the skull or anything, so it's not a fatal wound. So it's just it's a very shallow wound to her head. Then we have number 2. This is going to be another linear stab wound on the left parietal scalp above the left ear. Is a 1/2 by 1/16 linear stab wound with irregular edges. It's oriented from 9 to 3. Both ends are sharp. So you've got two different knives right here. Both ends are sharp. This is like the clip point on a K-bar. And you can see that at 3/4 inch, this one's only a 1/2 inch wide. So when you compare it to this one, look, you got 3/4 inch. If you take an inch right here, here's 3/4 inch. Here's 1 1/4 inch. So I mean, you're not talking about. Let's see. Let's do it from here. Here's 1 1/4 inch. Here's 3/4 inch. If they were both done by this same knife, you would have that same wound pattern. 1 1/4 inches. This is square and sharp. This one 3/4 inch, sharp and sharp. It's definitely two different knives. And a 1/2 inch at 3/4 inch, 1 1/4 inch. This thing's an inch wide. It's two different knives. One of them's much wider. One of them's a butcher knife. This one is consistent with a clip point like on a K-bar. But 9 to 3, both ends are sharp. It's got a marginal abrasion. It's hemorrhagic, so it's bleeding as it's happening. And travels from left to right, slightly downward to a depth of 3/4 inch. Left to right, slightly downward. So, and again, this is on the left parietal scalp. This is picture Maddie laying in bed. This is on her left scalp. Interesting. Now we've got a little cut, just a small cut up here on the right forehead at the hairline. It's a 5/16 by 1/8 inch linear incise wound with undermining. Undermining means the skin kind of flaps over. And it's got a marginal abrasion. There's a 1 inch linear incise tail extending inferiorly. So there's a little tail from the midpoint of the wound. So right here, a rectangular red-brown abrasion. Rectangular red-brown abrasion extends inferiorly and laterally from the inferior wound edges. the inferior edge of this abrasion shows fine striations. Okay, so this is just a very small cut. It's got a rectangular brown abrasion extending inferiorly and laterally from the inferior wound edges. So inferiorly and laterally. So that means right and to the left. But fine striations means small teeth of a serrated knife. So this is going to be consistent with the kitchen knife, just scraping the head. But it's a very small, little 5/16 by 1/8 linear incise wound. So it's just a little cut. Now this is one we've already talked about. This is on the right upper cheek, and it's 3 intersecting incise wounds, all together measuring a 4 by 1 inch in greatest dimension configuration. Undermining extends superiorly to the right eyelid. Undermining means a flap. And it's interesting when you go through this. This is a hemorrhagic wound track. So this is happening, I believe, right after they stab Maddie with the fatal blows. And then associated findings, blood is present in the right nostril. Then it starts talking a lot in Maddie. They don't talk about this at all in Xana and Ethan, but it's purple ecchymosis. And there's something strange when you get to Maddie, because there's several things that discusses purple ecchymosis and dark purple ecchymosis, but there's one wound that says pink ecchymosis. And I think it's very indicative of what happened, and I'll tell you why. And the wound track travels from the decedent's front to back upward in a depth of 1.5 inches. So slash, slash, slash. See, here's another wound that's below that. Now this one is a stab wound on the lower right cheek, overlying the mandible. So it's going to be right in here. That was more up here. This one's going to be down here. And it tells you that it's a 1 inch wide, up to 1/8 inch linear stab wound oriented from 10 to 4. So 10 to 4. I've got it too far up here. It says overlying the mandible. So it's going to be right here, actually. The depth cannot be accurately assessed due to the wound track entering the oral cavity, but you can pretty much determine it if it's 1 inch wide, how deep it's going because of this type of wound. When we go back to the first wound, it's 1 inch wide. It goes 1.25 inches in. So I can pretty much guarantee this is a 1.25 inch depth wound at a 1 inch wide blade. 10 o'clock in is squared, 4 o'clock in is sharp. So again, not a K-bar. It also indicates pink. This one indicates pink ecchymosis is present at the wound edges. It does have a hemorrhagic wound track, but pink ecchymosis is showing something that's a little bit different than purple ecchymosis. The wounds that are purple ecchymosis, which are most of them, was created likely at a different time than this one with pink ecchymosis. Pink ecchymosis is consistent with it happening like at a different period of time. And I think this is a good indication of Maddie being attacked in the bed, and then some time goes by, and before she's done bleeding, she gets an extra strike with pink ecchymosis. Only way I can explain this. But anyway, the irregular red abrasion is present at the margins of this wound, extending up 3/8, so it's got a little abrasion next to it. Next, we've got 2 more wounds on the right side of the chin. These are 3/4 inch by 1/16 inch linear incise wounds. They're hemorrhagic, and it travels from front to back and downward. So these are just 2 cuts on the bottom of her right chin right here. Very small, 3/4 inch. On the upper left cheek is a 1/2 inch by 1/16 inch curved linear incise wound. So it's a curved cut, and it has purple ecchymosis surrounding the wound, which is interesting that They really talk about the ecchymosis in Maddie. 5/8 inches from the lateral wound edge. I'll have to really do some studying on this ecchymosis. So it's a curved linear cut, just a small one right here, a half inch cut. On the left mid cheek is a 1/8 inch linear stab wound oriented from 11 to 7. So on the left mid cheek, so it'd be about right here, and both ends are sharp. Purple ecchymosis is present. It's 7 o'clock end. This one is weird because look, he's got it 11 to 7, or she's got it 11 to 7. There's no such thing as an 11 to 7 wound. Look, say 11 to 7. This is just a bad job by this pathologist. It should be 11 to 5, I imagine, but they say 11 to 7. So the wound would actually be like this, but we don't know. So I just put it like this because there's no such thing as 11 to 7. Both ends are sharp. No way to tell the depth by the wound track, but the blade is 1 inch wide. So if it was a K-bar at 1 inch, I mean, it would have inserted all the way in. Purple ecchymosis. Now these are two 5-inch long, 1 1/8 inch in width. This is a throat cut, 2 of them. Minimally hemorrhagic wound tracks. These happened pretty much after Maddie was pretty much passed away. When it says minimally hemorrhagic, that means they didn't bleed. So these happened at the end or later. And minimally hemorrhagic indicates the last wounds inflicted likely as the victim was almost passed or as the victim had been passed. So double slash on the neck. Stab wounds of the torso. All right, so you've got right here is a 10 to 4 gaping stab wound on the upper chest. It only goes in 2 inches. It's 3/4 inches wide. It's got a squared and a sharp 4 o'clock end. So it's a stab wound in this orientation. 10 o'clock end is sharp. So you have stab wound in this orientation right here. And it's only 2 inches deep, 3/4 inches wide, which doesn't match anything else I've looked at so far on Maddie, but it does talk about a lot of the blood on Maddie is 1,000 milliliters of blood and a clot within the left chest cavity. So her chest cavity filled up with blood. But a 2-inch deep on a K-bar, it would get to the 10 and square 4 sharp look. So this could be consistent with the clip point K-bar because it's square once you get that deep. Now, this one, oh, by the way, that one, is only 2 inches, but it got the subclavian artery and vein. That would have been a fatal wound. It just would have taken some time. Now this one, only 2 inches deep. It's a stab wound on the medial upper left chest, just left of the midline. So right in here. It's 1 1/4 inch by 3/16 inch. It's only 2 inches deep and it's 1 1/4 by 3/16. So that's actually wider than the entire width of this blade. This is going to be a different blade. This is going to be that kitchen knife or that butcher knife. It's 9 to 3, but the 9 o'clock end is sharp. 3 o'clock end is squared. Purple ecchymosis again. This one shows fine striations. So again, that's a serrated knife with a serrated blade, but it's a very fine serrated blade when it says fine striations. So it's not This is definitely not the K-bar. Here's a fatal wound. This one is a depth of 8 inches. Now, I don't care how hard you stab when you're over here in the chest, you're not going to have much give. A 7-inch K-bar with a guard cannot create an 8-inch wound track. So this is a knife that's an inch longer than the K-bar. This is a fatal wound. This one hit lung and I mean, this is a death blow right here. Upper left breast, there are 2 gaping linear stab wounds. So these are 2, and they're really, like overlapping each other. I've got it shown here as 2 different ones, but they're really one big wound because they're 1.5 inches wide and 2 inches wide, but they're a half inches thick and 7/8 of an inch thick. So, I mean, that's why you're seeing the wound be so wide, because they overlap each other. And that's why they only have the depth of one of the blades at 8 inches. You can't see the depth of the other blade. And but it tells you it's 10-4 and 11-5. So 11-5, 10-4, boom, boom. But they're really right on top of each other. It's hemorrhagic. The second rib is fractured anteriorly. That's probably one of the reasons that they know that that's 2 different stab wounds. But the fact that you can't tell the depth of only one of them, if it goes in all the way with a butcher knife, you're going to get to 2 inches. The other strike probably didn't go in all the way, and that's why you're only getting to 1.5. Fatal wound, though. And then this one right here, again, it's a depth of 7.5 inches. Can't do that with a K-bar. It's going to be a butcher knife like this right here. It is a 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock wound. 2 o'clock in is squared, 8 o'clock in is sharp. So 2 o'clock squared, 8 sharp. This one is definitely a death blow because it hits the lobe of the right lung, the right diaphragm, leaflet, and the liver. But yeah, purple ecchymosis. Well, they all over the ecchymosis on Maddie for some reason. But yeah, that's going to be consistent with the Kopaka knife. Now, when we get to the upper extremities, look, we've got 10 wounds on the upper extremities. They're almost all on Maddie's left arm and left hand. So you got the deltoid region of the left arm, an incise wound. So it's got a 1.25 inch deep, 2 3/4 by 1/2 inch slash on Maddie's left deltoid muscle up here at the shoulder. Next one, angled incise wound, approximately 4 by 1.5 inches in greatest dimension. So this is another, just a big slash, 1 inch deep, 4 inches long, 1.5 inches wide, just below Maddie's left deltoid muscle. Now, on the left dorsal arm, the outside of the arm, you've got irregular edges showing a serrated blade. It's a 1/2 inch by 1/4 inch linear incise wound. So it's going to be a cut with a tail. It's got a superficial incised tail extending medially. So this is just a small 1/2 inch slash on Maddie's outside left forearm. On the ventral left forearm, meaning the inside of the left forearm, is 2 times up to 1/2 inch incise wound, or 2 inches by 1/2 inch incise wound with 1/8 inch superficial tail. So it's going to be a 2 inch long, 1/2 inch wide incise wound with a tail. It's a 3/16 of an inch. This is again on her left inside of her left arm. The dorsal left hand on the base of the middle finger. This is just going to be a little slash on the base of the middle finger. I mean, of the ring, or the middle finger. God dog, look at there, base of the middle finger. I put it on the ring finger, so it's going to be right here. 1/2 inch by 1/8 inch incise wound with irregular edges indicating serrate. So it's just going to be a little slash on Maddie's left finger. And then you've got 4 wounds here on the palmar aspect of the left hand. So this is the left palm. At the base of the left thumb is a 2 inch by 3/16 inch linear incise wound. Associated findings: 4 superficial linear incise wounds are present at the central palm, ranging in length from 1/4 inch to 1 inch. So these are really 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's really 5 wounds on her palm that are slashes. So this is actually 5 wounds, 5 different slashes, 4 of them superficial, but it's defensive wounds on Maddie. Dang, that's 5 right there actually. Okay, so weapon characteristics. So the pathologist says that the findings are consistent with a blade 1 3/16 to 1 1/4 inch in width and approximately 5/32 to 3/16 in thickness. Yeah, right. You've got 3, 7, and it doesn't talk about the depth because he knows that depth went to 8 inches, but you got 3 strikes that are 2 inches wide. Elasticity ain't counting for that, buddy. So you know that's it's 2 knives. One of them is a clip point that made at least one of the wounds, and the rest of them are all made by what I believe is a likely butcher knife. But I have to redo the Maddie thing now because I didn't read that close enough. That's 5 incised defensive wounds on her left hand. But see, and it's not until I do this that it gets really interesting. Because when you look at all these wounds, I should have made these 2 a different color because these are pretty much, if not post-mortem, close to post-mortem because there's no minimal hemorrhagic tract, meaning that it didn't bleed when they cut her. But when you look at all the wounds on her, there's nothing below the chest, nothing on the legs, nothing on the right arm. There are a few strikes, this one and this one right here on the top, and this one on the forehead on the right side of her head, which means she likely tilted her head to the right. And other than that, there's strikes on her cheek, one on her chin down here, and then everything else is on her left arm, on the front and the back of her left arm, meaning if the perpetrator is to the right of her, she has held her arm in a defensive position in 2 different ways. You know, she held it up with her palm in and with her palm out, trying to block these shots. So, I mean, that's 2 different positions. So she's cut with her palm in or with her palm out. So picture her putting her palm over her face, and she's getting cut with a defensive wound here and 5 of them on her palm. 4 linear slashes and 1 kind of a gaping slash. But then she switches the orientation of her arm to an outside palm defensive position because she's got 2 defensive wounds here, one on her forearm and one on her index finger. And then we've got what I believe is a purposeful 1, 2, 3 on the cheek up here, along with these shallow stab wounds here. And then you've got the fatal ones. These 2 only went in a couple of inches, but they were deep enough to pierce a lung and pierce the subclavian artery and vein. So these would have been fatal given enough time, but these 3 were 8 inches, 8 inches, and 7.5 inches with a 2-inch wide blade. These were like fatal instantly. And then I believe after the Maddie, after they brought Kaylee up and did the Kaylee thing, then they went back and created these 2 right here. But I believe they did the A before they were interrupted. I believe all these wounds happened before they were interrupted, except for 1 wound on her face that shows pink ecchymosis. I believe it was done after the fact as well. I don't know why. But that's really interesting. But when you think about all the defensive wounds, I mean, she's got 27 wounds, it said. Well, you've got people go, well, that didn't look like in Xana. They were going, that only looks like about 30 wounds. Well, they're not taking into consideration. Look, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. Those are the 27 wounds. These completely fatal strikes. These would have been fatal given enough time. These were post-mortem. This one right here likely was close to post-mortem. These are all defensive wounds that happened during the fight. I believe the cuts on her head and her face were likely during the fight. That's what she's trying to block her face from. So Maddie wouldn't have taken much time at all, but it would have certainly taken enough time to alert Kaylee if she was in the bed with her. Let me know your thoughts. Oh, and this is what I was showing in a video yesterday. So if Maddie and Kaylee are here, all of these strikes had to come from over here. I had one guy say, well, she could have been blocking her chest wound with her right hand and getting all the defensive wounds on her left hand if he was on top of her. Now, you're not going to get shoulder wounds over here, and you're not going to have two orientations of her left arm trying to block her face. And if her right arm was blocking her chest where a wound happened, then she would have got defensive wounds on her right arm. No way. This all happened, or it initially happened from this position. Now, he may have got on top of her and produced those final three deep chest wounds, but in that manner, Kaylee would have had enough time to get out of that room. She was in the bed with her. Let me know your thoughts.